Welcome, my friends, to another edition of The Woggers Way. If you're struggling to correctly set up the drain pipes under your kitchen sink when you have a garbage disposal, or you found out that all the junk that's down in your disposal doesn't seem to be flushing out properly, well, then I have the solution for you. It's the right way, it's the easy way, it's the Woggers Way. Hi, I'm Brian with Woggers General Services in Las Vegas, where I show you step by step how you can do repairs around your house, whether you're a novice or a more seasoned DIYer. Now, if you've ever replaced your garbage disposal and struggled to get the drain pipe set just right, I'm going to show you a very easy way to do it that's geared towards you, the home repair DIYers. Plus, later on, I'm going to show you an alternative configuration, which, in my opinion, is actually better. So stick around for that. Now, this house had constant issues with the kitchen sink draining slow or backing up, and which caused a premature breakdown of the garbage disposal. Now, I'm going to show you why it was happening and how you can avoid the same issues in your house. So let's jump into it. Now, this is a pretty standard setup for drain pipes under your kitchen sink when you have a garbage disposal. And yes, I understand that we in the States are one of the few places that actually install garbage disposals under the kitchen sinks. Many friends and families throughout Europe and Canada think it's rather bizarre that we dump garbage down our sinks and that we actually have a contraption to facilitate that. And in Canada, I've heard them referred to as a garbinator by the few that have one, eh? Now, whether you call it a garbage disposal or a garbinator, when you run water through the basin on the side of the garbage disposal, or if you're grinding anything up in the disposal and trying to flush it out, you need the water and waste to flow out of the disposal, across to the waste tee, and down through the P-trap, and then out the drain, as depicted here by the arrows in Woggers Way green. Now, to do that, you need this pipe to not be sloped upwards out of the disposal. Otherwise, any water or waste will just flow right back into the disposal, which is what was happening in this house. Okay? You want the drain to be at least at the minimum level, but preferably with an ever slight slope down and away from the disposal. That way, everything flows in the direction it's intended. Now, as you can see by the bubble on the level, this pipe is drastically sloped upwards, going away from the garbage disposal. Now, once the water is turned off, any water or waste in the pipe just flows right back into the disposal, and then it just sits there, contributing to rusting and early failure of the disposal. Plus, it really creates some nasty smells coming out of your sink. Now, what a lot of DIYers struggle with is this piece over here. That's the waste tee. The biggest obstacle many have is getting this pipe from the disposal to the waste tee at the proper length so it stays inside the tee. The reason is because where the pipe enters the tee, you only have about, maybe 3/4 of an inch, so there's no wiggle room. You have to get the pipe just right. And to make it easier for you, instead of this waste tee, I'm going to show you how to use this waste tee, called a telescoping tee. Now, before I get into the mechanics of setting up the pipes, you need to make sure you have all your parts on hand, and they include the following: the telescoping tee, a 3/8 inch wrench, a 3/8 inch nut driver, which is optional, something to cut your drain pipes with, and if you don't have a pipe cutter like this, a hacksaw works just fine, some 1.5 inch pipe washers, which I'll go over shortly, a small level, and you'll probably want some gloves because it can get nasty when working with drain pipes. You may also need a flange tube and a flange washer. But if you get this disposal kit, it'll have all the pipes, fittings, and washers included. I'll put a link to it in the description below. Plus, it's only like $6 US. Now let me show you the difference between when using the standard waste tee compared to the telescoping tee. Now here's the standard tee that I took off, and here's the tube coming from the garbage disposal. As you can see, there's a very short nipple on the standard tee. When this slides in, it only has about 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch for the pipe to attach. And as a DIYer, sometimes you need just a little bit more room for adjusting. And this really doesn't give you any wiggle room. You pretty much have to cut it at the exact length needed. Now let's get rid of this tee and bring in our new tee. Now, as you can see how the other one had a small, short nipple, this one has a much longer nipple.
Despite popular belief, size does matter.
I completely agree.
You can see how this telescoping one allows you plenty of room for adjustment. So if you don't cut this pipe exact, there's no worries. You can cut this tube so it falls right about in the center of the telescoping T, and it still gives you plenty of play in and out to get a perfect fit. For DIYers, this makes it a whole lot easier. To begin the disassembly, we need to remove the pipe that goes from the disposal over to the waste T. Now, I'm sorry that the cabinet style here is in the way, but just take a 3/8" wrench and that'll normally take care of those screws. And there are 2 machine screws on the plate holding the pipe to the outlet port on the disposal. Once I crack free those screws, I like to use a nut driver just to make it go a little bit faster. Slide your bracket from the disposal back. You're going to loosen up the nut here. That helps. Now just unscrew the pipe nut on the side of the T where the pipe enters the T. Once you have it all the way off, you can remove the pipe. Next, you're going to remove the trap. Now make sure you have something to catch the water because the trap will be full of water. Just unscrew the nuts on both ends of the trap, get them all the way loose, and then you're just going to drop the trap down and dump the water out that's in it. There may be a lot of nasty smelling water and gunk in there. Now you're going to remove the existing waste T by unscrewing the nut here at the top. Once you have it loose, you'll be able to slide the waste T down and off of the flange tube. Now this T was just barely hanging onto the flange tube. Now it has nearly 1 inch at the top of the T for the flange tube to enter, but this one was held on by maybe 1/8 of an inch. So if you knock the pipes when putting something under the sink, you could easily separate the T from the flange tube, and then you'll just have leaking into the cabinet every time you use that basin. Now I'm going to remove the flange tube and exchange it for one of proper length, since this one is actually too short. Now what you want to do is go ahead and remove the T, you will get rid of that, and then take off the nut and washer that's on the flange tube up here. Now we're going to reuse the nut, but the washer, we're going to replace that, so you can get rid of this washer. Here are all the drain pipes laid out as they'll be installed, so you can see how this puzzle fits together. Now the flange tube will attach to the sink strainer with this flanged washer and a metal nut. The metal nut's not in the picture. Then the telescoping T will attach to the bottom of the flange tube using a 1.5" washer and nut. The trap will attach to the bottom of the T, also with a 1.5" pipe washer and nut. The other end of the trap will attach to the wall pipe with a pipe nut, but no washer. And finally, the pipe from the disposal slides into the T using another 1.5" pipe washer and nut to secure it. The other end of this pipe will attach to the disposal with those 3/8" machine screws you removed earlier through this plate. So just make sure you have everything ready to go. Remember, I'm going to need to remove this flange pipe because it's too short. That's why the drain out of the disposal was sloping upward, because this flange tube wasn't cut long enough, so they had to raise the T up too high, which caused the upward slope from the disposal. To remove it, unscrew the metal nut that's on the bottom of the sink strainer. Now, I had already loosened it, but normally you would need some pliers to get it off. Just make sure that once you have it off, that you save the nut that's on the edge of the flange pipe. You're going to need it to attach the new pipe. To attach the new tailpiece, you'll install the nut that you previously removed from the old tube. Just slide it on the end. Then in the end with the flange, which is at the top, you'll install a flanged washer. Now if you look at the flanged washer, you'll see it has a little lip or step down that fits into the end of the pipe. It kind of looks like a little hat. Place the washer into the end of the tailpiece so it fits nice and flat. Then hold it up against the bottom of the strainer. And then you just want to lightly attach it. You don't need to cinch down the nut right away because all we need to do is put it in place so we can kind of find out where everything needs to be cut. Next is the T that's going to go on. Now it's going to sit, you want to adjust it so you have the correct slope as it comes out of the garbage disposal. Now you want to make sure it's level over to the T or preferably even slightly sloped downward towards the T. Now to figure out where to line everything up, place the extension tube that goes from the garbage disposal into the T first. Since we have plenty of room for adjustment, you'll cut it so the end of the extension tube is near the center of the T. Now, if you don't have a pipe cutter, you can use a hacksaw. just make sure to cut it straight. You can see that on the old pipe, they did a very poor job cutting it the last time. Now, if you look at the end, it's on an angle. So only one point was fully inserted into the T, but the other edge was just barely got in there. So you want to make sure to get a nice, flat, level cut. Since we have a lot of room for adjustment, I'm just going to eyeball it so it ends up in about in the center of the T. Now, I like to use this pipe cutter, and as you can see, it has a little blade on the inside. And when you squeeze the handle, you see it retracts that blade. And that way you can get your pipe to slide up inside. Now, once you got it lined up, it has a little sight hole here on the side where you can line it up with your mark. That's where the cutter is. And then you just turn it. And it also has a little label on here to tell you which way to turn it for cutting. And just a few turns will do it. Just don't depress the handle while you're turning it because you don't want to retract the cutting blade. Just hold it down here past the handle. What's nice about this tool is that it makes a nice, clean cut and nice and straight. No burrs, just a nice, clean, straight cut. Now go ahead and mount the extension tube onto the garbage disposal in order to get a measurement. All right, we have our extension tube from the garbage disposal mounted, and we have our flanged pipe extending down from the sink strainer. Now we just need to measure where to cut the flange pipe to properly fit into the T-fitting. The easiest way to do that is to first place the level onto the pipe from the disposal and make sure it's either level or very slightly sloped downward away from the disposal. Then you're going to slide the telescoping T onto the pipe. Now we can see where to cut the flange pipe from the strainer. Now it doesn't have much room where it goes into the top of the T, only about 3/4 of an inch, so we have to make sure it's just right, or you're going to have the same issue as the one we removed. Remember, the other one was cut too short, so they had to lift up on the T to get it to seat, which is how they got that wrong slope to begin with. Now go ahead and mark the flange pipe at the point where it would bottom out into the top of the T. And since there wasn't enough room to operate the cutter with the flange pipe attached, I'm going to remove the pipe from the strainer and then cut it to the mark I just made. And now we can put this back on. Make sure you don't forget to put your washer back in. And then reattach it to your strainer. Now if we take this, we put it on here, now it's on there, and it's seated all the way down to the bottom. We're not just barely into the top like the old one was. And we got the right slope. One thing you want to remember is when you put your drain pipes together, nothing needs to be under pressure. In other words, you don't want to pull this down under pressure and then tighten the nut to keep it in that spot. Okay? You don't want to push it up under pressure and then tighten the nut to hold it there, because what's going to happen is it's going to have pressure, it's going to want to pull it apart. So everything should fit together and hold together without any other method of attachments. And this will go on the bottom of our T. Now, if necessary, we can always cut this part here. So we attach our trap to the bottom here. And I can already tell we have our wall tube here barely touches in there. So we might have to make some adjustments here. So this lets us go all the way down to here. So we got plenty in there. We're not bottoming out, so we don't need to cut this at all. Okay. So this is all going to fit together just right. Nothing's pushed or pulled or under pressure. So now we can put it all together. Always dry fit everything just to make sure everything's working perfectly. Everything should be in position without having to force anything. Okay? Now we can go ahead and put all our washers and nuts on there. At almost every joint, you'll install a nut and a washer. Now, if you look at the slip washers, they're beveled. Might be a little easier to see it here. Now, the flat part, or the widest end, is the end that goes against the nuts. The beveled end, or the point, is the part that goes into the adjoining pipe. So in other words, here we have our pipe coming down. You put your nut on first, Then put your washer on with the wide part towards the nut. So in other words, up on this one. Should fit nice and snug. And we push it up out of the way. Now this washer will hold the nut from falling off. Okay. We're going to do the same thing with our pipe coming out of our disposal. We have a nut we put on first. We have a washer we put on, the wide end towards the nut. And we're going to slide that back if we can. We got a lot of play on there, so push that back. All right. And then on the bottom of our T, where our trap is going to go into, we need to do the same thing. We have our nut, and we have our washer. Now you notice this one's here, this one's white, the other one's red. You'll find them green, red, white. The white ones tend to be the hard plastic, the older style. The red and the green one are more of a soft plastic. I've never had a problem with either one of them. So put that on there, push it up. You may hear some noise. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but they're doing carpet cleaning in here today. All right, so now we're all set. So we'll take our trap off here. And we'll put all this together. Everything right now is just hand tight. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide our T on here. We can tilt it to be able to get it over here. And then you want to make sure when you pull the washer down, the washer seats inside the opening of your pipe here. Okay? And then bring your nut down and start your nut. Now don't tighten it all the way because you want to make sure you want to adjust everything. So we just have it on there. Same thing over here. Your washer, you need to make sure it fits inside your pipe. If it's not fitting in there properly, you might not have the pipe straight. They might be like cockeyed. So you want to make sure your pipes are straight. The one that goes in is perfectly straight with the one it's going into. And we'll start our nut. And then our P-trap. The P-trap only goes on one way, okay? So you look at it here. You got a short side and a long side. The long side goes on your extension tube coming down, your T. The short side goes into your wall tube over here. Your wall tube has a fitting on the end that's beveled, which matches the bevel inside the short end. Okay? Don't turn them around. Oh, lost my light there. You don't want to turn them around because it's the only way it's going to fit. If that's the case, then you need to correct everything to make it right. So make sure you put it on the right. That slides up on your T. It comes up here. Bring your nut down. Now there's no washer here. Okay? This beveled fitting on the wall tube fits in here and creates your seal. Okay? You'll pull this up. Start your nut on there. Don't tighten everything all the way. Let's leave everything so we can adjust it. And then let's do the same here. Make sure you don't cross thread these nuts because everything's just plastic. So they will cross thread easily and ruin the threads, and then you'll have leaks. Okay, so everything's on here. Everything's just hand tight, just kind of a little bit loose because I want to make sure everything's positioned correctly. This is all straight. You don't want it, like I said, you don't want anything cockeyed. You don't want to have to force this back to reach the wall tube. So this all needs to be in a straight line, okay? Which it is. These need to be in a straight line, which they are. And you want to slope from your garbage disposal to your T, either level or slightly down towards the T. Okay? Okay, your P-trap joins on your wall tube, which goes in to your wall. Once everything's in there and nothing's under pressure or force to hold it there, then go ahead and tighten everything down. And they just need to be nice and hand tight. You don't need to go Hulkster on them. Everything's tight. We got to tighten our nut up here, which we only did hand tight to begin with. And once again, you don't need to go Hulkster on this either, but you need this one to be fairly snug. But you got the washer in there. Everything's good. One thing you don't want to do is put pipe dope or Teflon tape on any of these pipe threads. If you're doing that, it means you don't have everything lined up properly. These do not require any pipe dope on the threads or nylon tape on the threads. Okay? Everything's in there just fine. Everything's good. Everything's level. Everything's straight in line. Everything's tight. Now we can test it. I always do a few different tests. We test them with the drains open. Run some water. And then you want to look down to make sure nothing's leaking anywhere. Okay? And you want to do that in both basins. Okay? Because sometimes if it leaks, it might be your seal around your strainer or around your garbage disposal mount to your sink. So that's one thing you want to pay attention to. And you want to look down below and make sure nothing's leaking. And we're good. Now, the next test is you want to fill your sinks up. Now, you don't need to fill them up all the way, but you do need to get some water in there. The reason being is, and we'll go down, and I'll show you from down here. When you just run your water, and the water's running, and nothing's, you don't have your sink plugged up, the water's running along the bottom of your pipe, okay? So it's going to run along the bottom, it's going to go down here, it's going to hit the bottom, it's going to stay in the bottom, it's going to come up, it's going to run the bottom of there. But what happens if the part that's compromised is at the top of the pipe? Well, you're not going to know because you only have enough water that's filling up the bottom of the tube, okay? So what we do is we fill the sink full of water. We pull the plug, I call this a power flush, because you want a lot of water going in there at once because you want that water to fill up the whole drain tubes, okay? You want them completely full. That way, if you have a problem at the top of the pipe, that's where you're going to find out if there's a problem, okay? We're going to do that in both basins. So we're going to let this run for a little bit. We'll get some water in there. And then we'll do the same over here. And we'll pull those and we'll power flush our pipes. All right, I got plenty of water in the sink now. Actually, probably more than I needed to. So we're getting ready. We're going to pull the plug and plug is out. So now you want to check for leaks. Look up here where meets your strainer, all the fittings that you just did, okay? This one we'll check when we do the other basin. So right now we're looking, make sure there's no water. Have your little bucket ready just in case there's water. You can put it underneath there and catch it. Have a rag available. So this one is draining out pretty much all the way. And so far, no leaks. All right, so now we want to check from the garbage disposal over to the T. So we're going to go ahead and fill the other basin now. Get a little bit better angle now. You can see from the disposal out to where it meets the T fitting. Made sure I tighten my nuts here on the disposal. That's holding the tube to the disposal. Everything's tight. We got our basin full of water. We're going to go ahead and pull that. I'm also going to turn the garbage disposal on at the same time. It just helps it drain a little faster. Here we go. All right, it's running. And no leaks from there, no leaks from here. And we just installed the garbage disposal yesterday. We have no leaks up here. We are good to go. Now, at the beginning of the video, I said I was going to show you an alternative configuration and how to set up the pipes, and this is it. So I like this way better because if you notice before, we had this pipe coming out of the garbage disposal, coming straight across, and then it went down to the P-trap. Well, in this configuration, you notice when it comes out of the garbage disposal, it just goes straight down. Okay? So what that does is it helps get the waste out of the garbage disposal and away from it. So it comes out, gravity just pulls it down right towards the trap. where before it would come out into that tube coming across, and it could actually, your waste and stuff could settle in that tube and it can create some smells. It can cause the tube to clog up. So this way is a much better configuration. So if you can set it up like this, all the better for you. A lot of that's going to depend on where your wall tube is coming out of the wall for your drain. If it's too far away from your disposal, you're not going to be able to set it up this way unless, of course, you flip your disposal and strainer around. And we got a video coming out shortly that's going to show you how to mount strainers and garbage disposals. Otherwise, if it's close enough, but not quite close enough where you can get it to, adjusting the P-trap, you might need to put an elbow on the wall tube, which earlier in the video, how I showed you the 22.5 degree elbows, 45, 60s. You might need to put one of those on. You can direct it closer over towards the disposal, and you can set it up this way. So that's just another way of doing it. I'd like to thank you for watching. I hope it helps you with your project. And if you haven't already done so, I'd really appreciate it if you would tap that thumbs up like button and subscribe to my channel for all your home repair needs. Oh, and while you're here, I have a couple other videos over here for you to watch. Oh, and now there's a Woggers Way merch store. That's right, there's merchandise for the Woggers Way. I'll put a link in the description section below. Check it out. I'll also put links to the products and tools you use in this video. And in the meantime, good luck with your projects, and I'll see you in the next video.